Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So, like, share, subscribe, you guys, if you want more information along these lines. And really, we cover a lot of different things. And we've been doing this for 9 years. And, we're not the favorites of the algorithm or those that actually put together the algorithm. But it's really just because of the topics that we cover, like this. The U.S. military under investigation over claims that weaponized ticks to spread insidious disease. Yeah, absolutely. Scientists have long debated a chilling question. Did the U.S. military weaponize ticks during the Cold War? All you got to do is look, and you will see the answer to that. Now, this article is from December of 2025. Don't hold your breath waiting for them to really look deeply into this, because this article is 6 years old and you have a New Jersey lawmaker suggesting the government turn ticks and insects into bioweapons to spread disease, possibly release them. And literally, because many of the lawmakers themselves perhaps have a vested interest in a certain branch of business regarding health. So we understand there's a cynical nature that is starting to sweep people all over the world. And it's really that cynical nature is in regards to the governments that rule the world. When you look at ticks, there's a lot of different types of ticks. These are literally blood-sucking parasites. That's just what they are. Yes, they are basically the same thing as politicians. Blood-sucking parasites. But unfortunately, we found out that there's a lot of other blood-sucking parasites out there in certain industries. And as you can see, they start off pretty small overall. And as they feed, they get large, and you might not even recognize them. It's really a very, very disgusting thing. When I was a kid, they were they weren't anywhere when I was really small, or at least not out there in the public. I grew up in Connecticut, so, we were some of the first cases of Lyme disease. So you could see here, ticks have spread all over the place. It just seems like they have like a boost. They're getting some extra help. It certainly isn't from Mother Nature. They carry a lot of different diseases: ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, and of course alpha-gal now, which makes you kind of allergic to meat. Many people, especially farmers, are reportedly finding boxes full of ticks on their farms. In some cases, look at this. What the heck is that? Are those drones? Images from the USA. Genetically modified ticks are being dropped from the sky onto farms in boxes. American social media users have started sharing videos. I mean, there's tons of these videos out there. And these have been debunked by Snopes and many others. But again, debunking just simply means you are on the payroll. Anybody that starts, debunking things like this, when the answer to the question, is Lyme disease created in a laboratory, is clearly yes, when you follow the paperwork trail and you follow the patents and you just look at the history. Absolutely. So, but they still debunk, just like they try to debunk, again, the the weather modification. And yet it's there you go. I mean, you have one person out there, a military official, that makes a speech that acknowledges that they control the weather. They even talk about we have to control the weather by 2025, and China says the exact same thing. No, we need to control the weather by 2025. And again, there's declassified documents that prove it, and yet they'll still debunk it. Why would they do that? Well, again, there's money to be made. They are dropping ticks in this field. Why the heck would they do that? Well, again, if you know what's going to happen and you have insider information, you can make the right trades, you could buy the right stocks, you could get invested in the right next big cure, and then make a ton of profits. This is just how the system works. Again, we've had politician after politician with salaries that don't equate to the gain in net worth that they get from being in their position. And, this is just horrible. Deers being totally overcome because they're just infested with ticks, and it's not just deer. There's a lot of people too. And these things, again, they're blood-sucking parasites. They swarm animals. They swarm humans. And hundreds of thousands of Americans right now are fighting tick-borne diseases, probably really way higher than that. It probably is in the millions when you really realize it. Look at the numbers here that oh my gosh, this is just so gross. And it's up in Canada as well, by the way. It's in places that it used to never exist. How did this happen? How did they spread so quickly? Well, if you're dropping them from helicopters and planes, that could help to spread them. Oh my gosh. Even look at this. This is, I think this was in the Everglades. And, it's just insane. They're all over. They literally take down a large snake. It's just really an atrocity. Well, yeah, you would say too, why in the world, as you see that Gil Bates character funded research into genetically engineered cattle ticks, now 450,000 Americans have red meat allergies from alpha-gal syndrome. Yeah, people have literally lost their lives. Why are certain people apparently way above the law? Way above the law. Why again? Are there things going on like mosquito factories in Colombia and releasing 30 million GMO mosquitoes every week into 11 countries? This is insanity. Oh, well, no, we're trying to eradicate disease. Well, then why are the diseases spreading more than ever? It makes no sense. And why do you give cows something here? This was from Denmark, where they were forcing farmers to add that BOVAER substance to the cow feed, and then all sorts of cases of infertility and cows dropping. If you're really trying to help something, why is it the inverse result? And by the way, declassified documents do link the U.S. Bioweapons program to Lyme disease outbreak. Military released 282,800 radioactive ticks, suppressed co-infection research for 40 years. So, obviously we have people in the military that are going against everything that would make logical sense if you were truly out there, and the real purpose of the military was to protect the citizens. Why are you releasing radioactive ticks to infect the citizens?
And it just continues on. And why are there no laws? Why are certain people they continue to walk forward and move forward and nothing happens to them? If it is a nation of laws and we all have to follow the law, unless you don't have unless you do, you're in a position where you have enough money, you can just buy whatever, ticket to freedom you want. We need, somehow the playing field needs to be leveled, and it doesn't look like anyone is going to come and help us in any way. We really need to come together as a united force, because truly there are so many of us compared to them, and it's just a matter of cutting off their food source. Their food source is money. How do we be mindful enough and careful enough and spend our money in a way where it's not always going to go to them? Paying for things is it's their food supply, it's their blood supply. So following back, buying from mom and pop people, supporting your local farmers work so hard, and then a lot of them are tied to certain rules. If they want to stay in business, they have to do certain things, they need a break. The farmers definitely need a break. And then it's up to us to move in and support them where we can.
Declassified documents and testimony from a CIA operative described 1962. That's so many years ago now. Deployment of infected ticks against Cuban sugarcane workers as part of Operation Mongoose, the Kennedy administration's effort to destabilize Fidel Castro's regime. The operative, now in his 70s, told researchers that the strangest thing he ever did was drop infected ticks on Cuban sugarcane workers, using C-123 transport aircraft flying nighttime missions, almost skimming the surface of the Caribbean to avoid Cuban radar. After returning from Cuba, the operative's 4-month-old son developed life-threatening fever requiring emergency surgery. His CIA commander advised him to burn all the clothes you took to Cuba, burn everything, showing contamination concerns. The deployment was canceled when Cuba's shifting winds made accurate payload deliveries difficult, according to the operative's account. Between 1966 and 69, the U.S. military released 282,800 Lone Star ticks, made radioactive with carbon-14 across Virginia's sites along bird migration routes. The radioactive marking allowed researchers to track the tick spread using Geiger counters over several years. Before these experiments, Lone Star ticks were not found above the Mason-Dixon line. Within years of the Virginia releases, they had established populations on Long Island for the first time. 2 tick experts consulted about these releases said they were aghast, and you'd never be able to do that now. Well, they are. In 2014, researchers discovered extensive unpublished materials in the garage of deceased scientist Willy Bergdorfer, who identified the bacterium that caused Lyme disease. The materials revealed that Bergdorfer had found a second pathogen called Swiss agent in Lyme patient blood samples from Connecticut and Long Island in the late 70s. Blood from Lyme patients showed very strong reactions to Swiss agent testing, but this finding was completely omitted from Bergdorfer's landmark 1982 study that identified the Lyme disease bacterium. The suppression of this research for over 40 years may have contributed to treatment failures in chronic Lyme patients. Dr. Jorge Benash and Dr. Alan Steer, co-authors of the 1982 study, now acknowledge that Swiss agent research should be done because public health concerns warrant a closer look. Project 112, the hidden bioweapons expansion. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara authored Project 112 in 1962, creating what researchers describe as a bioweapons program almost as large and secretive as the Manhattan Project. The program involved 134 scheduled tests from 1962 to 1974 with production facilities capable of breeding 100 million infected mosquitoes monthly and 50 million fleas weekly. The program's existence was categorically denied by the military until 2000, when a CBS News investigation forced acknowledgement. Documents show the program involved every branch of the U.S. Armed Services and intelligence agencies, with testing sites spanning multiple countries. Operation Big Itch in 1954 successfully deployed 670,000 fleas from cluster bombs, proving arthropods could survive aerial deployment. Yes, absolutely. And soon attached themselves to hosts. The test validated bioweapons capable of covering a battalion-sized target area and disrupt operations for up to a day. Plum Island Disease Center sits just 13 miles from Lyme, Connecticut, where the disease was first identified from 52 to 69. The facility was managed by the Army Chemical Corps for biological warfare research before transferred to the Department of Agriculture. The facility frequently conducted its experiments out of doors with acknowledged containment failures, where test animals mingled with wild deer, test birds with wild birds. Richard Endress maintained over 200,000 soft and hard ticks of varying species in tick nurseries on Plum Island, personally collected from locations as far away as Cameroon, Africa. Wildlife regularly moved between Plum Island and the mainland. Deer from Lyme regularly swam to Plum Island, and local birds flew there to feed on insects, creating direct pathways for laboratory pathogens to reach wild populations. The Long Island Sound region experienced unprecedented outbreak of tick-borne diseases beginning in 1968. 68, the first eastern U.S. human babesiosis cases appear in Nantucket. In 68, Rocky Mountain spotted fever appears in Cape Cod region. 1970, hundreds of Rocky Mountain spotted fever cases documented on Long Island. 72, first 51 documented Lyme arthritis cases in Old Lyme, Connecticut. By the 1990s, the eastern end of Long Island had by far the greatest concentration of Lyme disease. According to one analyst, if he drew a circle around the area of the world heavily impacted by Lyme disease, the center of the circle was Plum Island. Willie Bergdorfer, who discovered Lyme disease bacterium in 1982, spent most of his career developing tick-borne biological weapons before transitioning to civilian research. In 2013 video testimony, he confirmed participation in bioweapons research and insinuated there had been accidental release of some sort. After cameras stopped rolling, Willie told us with a smile, "I didn't tell you everything, but try as we might, we couldn't get him to say more." Before his death in 2014, he left a note stating, "I wonder why somebody didn't do something." In 2007, when the documentary filmmakers attempted to interview Bergdorfer, a government scientist pounded on the door demanding to sit in on the interview, indicating ongoing official concern about his potential disclosures. And there's a pattern of institutional concealment. The investigation identifies systemic concealment behavior spanning multiple decades. Project 112 denied for 50 years despite extensive documentation. This just proves they're liars, and you can't trust anything from the military or politicians. Swiss agent research suppressed despite public health relevance. Relevant documents kept classified long after security justifications expired. Congressional investigation requirements resisted. Laboratory origins questions characterized as conspiracy theories. You know, again, think about back to 2020. Think about, the cure. Think about all this, and then you see how they truly have always acted. Because this is the same group. Again, in my mind, it's obviously the same group. The analysis performed also compared institutional responses across 3 laboratory leak investigations: U.S. Lyme case, Chinese SARS-CoV-2 origins, and Spain's recent African swine fever outbreak. All 3 cases showed identical patterns regardless of the political system under which they occur. What does that tell you? Ultimately, there's one government behind all governments that are above any laws. That's pretty simple. And initial cooperation followed by systemic obstruction, evidence suppression, restricted access, promotion of alternative explanations, deflecting from laboratories, attacks on investigator credibility rather than addressing evidence, preference for self-investigation over independent oversight. The Spanish case involved $8.8 billion pork industry that had an investigation conducted exclusively by Spanish institutions, despite the outbreak occurring 150 meters from an African swine fever virus research facility. In 2019, the House passed an amendment requiring the Pentagon to investigate whether the military experimented with ticks and insects regarding use as biological weapon between the years 1950 and 75, and whether any were released outside of any laboratory by accident or experiment design. The amendment was inspired by a number of books and articles suggesting that significant research had been done at U.S. government facilities, including Fort Detrick, Maryland, and Plum Island, New York, to turn ticks and other insects into bioweapons. And it goes on. And then we have, case after case of people talking about these things being dropped from boxes. So why are they so desperate to breed illnesses that are in many cases thought to be lifelong, that ultimately all you can do is really make something go dormant as opposed to eradicate it. Because, it's pretty obvious. It's lifelong profits. That's the obvious, answer to the question. Lifelong profits, because people will be having to take something, or in their minds having to take something all the time to keep from relapsing, and facing all the very, very severe different problems that arise from these diseases.
It is a cascade of problems once it occurs, and there, of course, is a mainstream way of doing things. But my question is how do you grow up being a, bioweapon specialist? I mean, what kind of childhood is that for someone to grow up and do that? I'm sure there's some type of weird trauma, but again, it is the military. It's just so strange what people will do. I mean, you're solely responsible for so much sickness. It's like, how can you do that? I have trouble sitting in the seat of those folks who sit there and do that. I can understand there's threats, and there's coercion and there's things like that, but yeah, it's a very difficult thing to think about. It's like, how do people do that?
Well, I think things get twisted in their minds. And by the way, this is giving you an illustration on how to remove the tick as you want to get the head out as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
But what I wanted to get across was ultimately there are other parasites that affect the people that are actually, in whatever way they're trying to justify doing stuff like creating worse diseases. There are other entities behind the scenes that are parasitic in nature, manipulating these people into doing things that ultimately they're going to have to face the karmic repercussions. You do not escape karma. It's the currency of being in this reality. So all the pain and suffering that individuals are creating is ultimately going to come back to them. In many cases, many times fold. It might not be in this life, but it will be in future lives.
Well, just because we've become professionals around here, what works for us to pull those things out is just pulling them straight out. That's worked and gotten the head every time so far. It's not the only way, but it's how we do it, and it works.
Yeah, we've taken, I don't know if we're in the thousands, but certainly hundreds of ticks, probably in the thousands, literally. There can be all different shapes and sizes and colors with the rash. Now, again, there's so many different pathogens associated with this. It basically causes an inflammatory response in the body, and if you talk to a good naturopath, or maybe osteopath, again, herbalists understand a lot of this too. But really, inflammation is at the root of many different diseases. So, again, it can attack the joints. When I first had it very bad, it was exactly 3 weeks to the day after the tick was taken. It was sent to a lab. I did develop a bullseye. The tick tested positive. And then exactly 3 weeks after it was removed, all of a sudden I was attacked with horrible arthritis. At that time I was like, I want to say I was 30. So I was kind of towards my prime, chronologically, and all of a sudden I felt like I was 80 overnight, and I was working for a pharmaceutical company at that time. We had a lot of Lyme's patients. Typically 50 to 75 Lyme's patients were, on board. We were serving. And I started to pay more attention to the Lyme's patients specifically, and I saw them going through vancomycin, Rocephin, and all these different heavy-duty antibiotics. And I was noticing that the people that we were serving at this particular pharmacy didn't seem to be getting better. No, it seemed like there was new co-infections, new problems that were coming. So I didn't go that route. I've researched and found that we happen to have in my little town an herbalist who was a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, and a lot of different naturopath. She understood how to attack the whole. And in fact, the first session I had with her was over 90 minutes long. And when do you get a doctor to sit down and explain things to you for 90 minutes? You don't with MDs, typically. Maybe that's changing. I think it is changing more and more. But yeah, this naturopath just really was my biggest teacher in all this. And what I decided to do, I wasn't going to be following all the Lyme disease forums and looking at all the different articles because they were mostly very negative. And I wasn't going to focus on disease. I was going to treat this as an attempt to boost my entire immune system and to become a better version of myself. And about 9 months later, it was completely in remission. And actually, I was feeling healthier than before.
Well, yeah, you focus on the problem gets bigger. You focus on the solution shows itself to you. But there's we're not doctors, but we are going to share what's helped and what we've seen help. And because you can really get yourself in a pickle if you go down certain roads. It's the kind of thing where it's a cascade. It's a cascade. So mainstream is going to treat it one way, and they're just going to continue to put band-aids on the situation. But just putting a band-aid on something is like stepping in poop and pretending you didn't. It's just not going to help anything. In fact, it's going to make things a lot worse and a lot messier if you just simply put band-aids on it. So you have to go through the whole body, and you have to heal the body and put the body in a position that it can heal itself. Unfortunately, the diet that we have these days, the SAD diet, it really is feeding the problems because of all the sugar, all of the processed foods. These all act as food to feed this disease.
Indoctrination, doctor is the root of doctor is in indoctrination. Indoctrination is the process of teaching someone to accept beliefs, ideologies, or doctrines uncritically. Unlike education, which encourages questioning and analytical problem solving, indoctrination focuses on instilling one-sided perspectives and actively discourages independent thought or opposing opinions. Everything is right in front of us all the time. So again, instead of focusing on all the problems that could develop, all the co-infections, etc., I just decided I was going to clean up my diet. This was really the turning point in my life when it came to diet. And I did, besides my naturopath, I did work with an allergist, and discovered that if you have allergic symptoms, you need to detox. It's just that simple. You need to detox. And really, again, when we're fighting these things, you have to recognize what feeds these pathogens. And it's interesting because the number one thing that seems to feed everything from cancer to these parasites like this is sugar. And when you look at the food pyramid that they gave us, and you look at all the processed foods in the middle of that food pyramid, they're loaded with sugar. And so whether it's high fructose corn syrup, whether it's cane sugar, or even organic cane sugar, it causes inflammation in the body and it feeds parasites. So the number one thing, it was my diet, really. It was diet first and foremost. And at that time, I was eating a lot more, just anything. I didn't eat all organic, and at times even would eat GMO foods without, recognizing it. This is when I stopped all that. And it was really because of the dietary changes and also adapting in more concerted meditation and Qigong. Qigong means energy work. And this is when I really shifted, because I was still doing like hard sparring and things like that with the more hard martial arts as opposed to the internal arts and focusing on things like Tai Chi and Qigong. This was what shifted my perspective. And, it's just like all the symptoms went away. The aches and the pains. I tested positive for rheumatoid arthritis twice, and the second time it was progressing, but then after the 9 months, there was no trace of it. So you can heal Lyme, and I do think naturally is the only way I would recommend. And again, we're not indoctrinated. We're not doctors. We just simply go from our own direct experience and everything we've seen. There's different herbs like wormwood, wonderful, clove. This garlic. If you feel like your immune system is under stress, take a clove of garlic, chop it up, let it sit out in the air for 10 minutes, come back, put it down. And you want to talk about antibiotics, it's going to be anti-parasites. And again, when you talk about antibiotics, that's everything. It's anti-life. It literally means anti-life. Like when we were talking about indoctrination, which, indoctrination, again, unlike education, and education means, you're encouraging questioning and analytical problem solving. Indoctrination focuses on instilling one-sided perspectives and actively discourages independent thought or opposing opinions. Well, that's exactly what we saw back in 2020, wasn't it? That's exactly what we see time and time again from, again, the money-making machine of the medical system we have on this planet. Wormwood, garlic, neem, oregano oil, black walnut hull, clove, berberine, papaya seeds, pumpkin seeds, thyme, turmeric, worm seed. Pumpkin seeds. Cindy and I, we would be munching on pumpkin seeds constantly as our appetite suppressant. So, number one, eliminate processed foods. Nothing that comes in a box. Eat just simply whatever lean protein source you choose. But again, and I've been vegetarian at times, and it was really tricky being vegan. Vegetarian gives you a little bit more option. It's good to know your blood type, in my opinion, too, because I do really well with dairy. So I love dairy, and my body loves dairy. But again, my blood type is B, so it depends on your blood type, and it depends on your own individual unique factors going into that, because some people definitely have allergies, and some people don't process certain foods the same. So we're not all the same there. But when it comes to some of these parasite cleanses and herbs, yes, there are some things that pretty much everybody can use. Fish was what my naturopath said should be my primary protein overall. Fish oils can be great for the joints.
Oh yeah, definitely a lot of fish oil. And when we're talking about Lyme, one of the things that you want to have in your body, and everyone should have it, is enough vitamin D. I mean, that's something that we should be tested on, and make sure your vitamin D is up there, because that's one of the things that discourages this disease to take hold. So if our body is optimally running, usually things just flow through it. Things that could harm you just flow. They go away if we're in balance, and that goes for all of our minerals too. So vitamins, minerals, and if you are in a position where you are trying to eradicate this Lyme disease, and you're doing all of these things, add in a binder, but be very careful. The binders need to be timed. You don't want to take them certain times of the day with certain things, and there's just a lot that goes into it. But all of these natural processes do work. But if you're taking in sugar, trying to do the natural processes, it's a high chance that you might not have good results at all, if any results. You cannot be taking in the sugars and processed foods and trying to heal your body. It's like, just you take something to help yourself heal, but you follow it up with some kind of poison. You're not going to get anywhere that way. And that's what we've noticed working on so many people, is the diet is that usually people are hoping for a cure without having to change their diet. And I have not seen that successfully occur. People have to adjust the diet, and that's probably the hardest thing. And, there's no mistake there. I mean, they want our food to be addictive. They want our food to be bad for us because it's a racket. It's a cycle. They keep sending people to the same people that keep funding them. Insurance costs, one procedure, if you pay out of pocket, might be $200, but if you have insurance, it's suddenly $2,000. So you can see the racket just it's right there in the open.
It's the good old boy network, yeah. So obviously, this is saying to reduce the dairy, but for me, that wasn't my personal trial and error. Absolutely, processed foods, it puts in fried foods. I think it depends on what type of oil you're using. Coconut oil or avocado oil are pretty much the only ones we use when it comes to frying, and then olive oil. Obviously things like canola oil, eliminate, Crisco, oh my God. There's so much that you can do. And I was amazed after switching my diet up completely. And, when I got Lyme's, I was eating vegetarian, and my naturopath got me to not eat vegetarian, and whatever she did recommend ended up working very well, because again, I went into complete remission, and literally I felt better than before I had Lyme's quite a bit. But so much of that was because I started to understand how to eat, and I eliminated the fast foods, eliminated things like Domino's pizza on Fridays. We make our own pizza, and it's way better than Domino's. It was interesting though. I was craving certain things, and I still crave sweet potatoes. I absolutely love sweet potatoes. They are one of my favorite things. But also, there was times with Lyme's when I would sit down and eat like 6 to 8 grapefruit. It was the vitamin C, I guess, I was craving in that. But, you listen to your body. And, of course, if it's craving sugar, that's not your body. That's the parasites telling you to basically self-destruct. Yes, I learned a lot about mushrooms and utilizing mushrooms. I hated mushrooms. I'd never want mushrooms on anything, including pizza. But then after Lyme's, I grew to appreciate mushrooms and even cook them. Cindy will tell you she doesn't know how I could eat them, but they're just immune system boosters. Their tendencies. They really can do amazing things. Mushrooms are literally a gift from the quote unquote gods. For more than one reason.
Well, yeah, but like with everything else, you want to source them carefully.
Yeah, valerian root, passion flower, eliminate insomnia, garlic, olive leaf, and cat's claws. Protein-rich foods. Again, if we're talking about fish, I would never eat any fish that says farm raised. None, zilch, no farm raised, wild caught only. Why? Because again, we were showing how they're literally giving ouchies to all the fish on the farms, and it's also it's not healthy the way these fish are raised. It's just like regular eggs. I can't eat regular eggs or eggs that are the cheapest ones. They have to be organic. They have to be not eating GMO feeds. So whatever, if you're feeding your chickens GMO seed or whatever it is, that GMO is going into you because you eat the eggs, that goes into you. You have to realize that your food is not just your energy, it becomes your body. It literally becomes your body. Every cell is being replaced at different time frames. And literally, if it's over 7 years' time, you're a totally different person on the cellular level.
Right. So, if you're on the fence about it, go do some good research on farm-raised fish and don't go that direction. That's our advice is all.
Yeah, and it reminds me that today is Friday. There's a guy that comes into town and he spends all his time catching catfish. Yeah, let's see if we can find him. I'll put this PDF. This is Dr. Hulda Clark, The Cure for All Diseases. It's a reprint, 640 pages. It's a PDF. So here you go. Use her protocols and experiment if you feel so inclined. Everybody has to make their own decisions. But for me, besides my naturopath, Dr. Hulda Clark was my next biggest weapon.
You know, she might come off as someone who's out there, but doesn't everyone who's been unindoctrinated in this world? You know, if you understand the system and you've seen the havoc that it can wreak, and if you have lost loved ones, then you definitely step out into a different world. And you know, after that, after you study other things and you take a deep dive into the world of health, you change, and with that change comes some funny looks. So her vibe is very different to me, but the truth that resonated was deep.
Yes, and we do want to also again invite you guys to join us with LifeWave. You know, LifeWave has been a lifesaver. The X39 literally triggers stem cells. It wakens stem cells. If you are my age, 60 years old or more, then you know probably 90+% of your stem cells are dormant. They're no longer working. Why wouldn't you want them to work? Well, yeah, we do want them to work. In fact, you know, that perhaps is one of the greatest keys to longevity. So there is a link to LifeWave, and this is our personal link, so it does support us a little when you do get the patches. And last night we had one of our family members just say how the X39, X49 combo together was doing amazing things for them.
So, you know, LifeWave does not treat, diagnose, or cure any disease. However, in our home, it has been a very useful addition to our daily practice, and it really helps keep us up there. Now, for Lyme, it is said that the protocol for that would be to add in the glutathione, so 3949 and glutathione.
And again, we are not doctors. We have not been formally indoctrinated by, again, the military-industrial complex or big FARMA. Do your own research. That's all we can encourage you guys to do. And, you know, keep your attitude positive. Absolutely. You know, what can we do in this world if we have a defeatist attitude? Things are not impossible. In reality, we can change our entire course so quickly. It's just a matter of focus. As always, guys, look forward to your comments. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.